Welcome back to the Daily Dose. I'm Mark, one of the pastors here at Gateway, and we are starting a new series on guilt and shame. Guilt and shame are common elements of every human experience. Any one of us could probably take 5, 10, 15 minutes and fill up multiple pages with all the things that we feel guilty or shameful about. And there's a lot of overlap between the two. A lot of times those words are used synonymously, but I think it's helpful as we begin this to kind of make some distinction between the two. A helpful way I've heard it described is that guilt is, I did something wrong, and shame is, something is wrong with me. And the way that plays out is in our responses. If guilt is, I did something wrong, what do we tend to do when we do something wrong? We hide. Or we try to cover it up or atone for it, make it right. I can fix this. Shame, something is wrong with me. I don't just hide, I don't just try to make it better, but actually I cover it. I make it so that nobody can see, or I pretend that I'm something different. And like I said, there's overlap between the two. But there's a possibility of experiencing one but not the other. I can feel guilty, if there's an accident, I didn't intend to do this, something bad just happened by accident, without feeling shameful because there was nothing inherently sinful. I can also feel guilty in a different kind of way, like, I can regret that it happened but not experience remorse, like, too bad, you deserved it. That's a negative way. Similarly, we can feel shame without it necessarily being connected to anything that we've done. In depression and severe mental illnesses, there's a sense of shame, like, I'm not the way I ought to be. Something is wrong. This needs to be changed. This needs to be fixed. And so you can experience one without the other, but there is oftentimes a lot of overlap. And we actually see this played out in Genesis 3. In the fall, Adam and Eve eat the fruit, and God comes down into the garden. And where are Adam and Eve? Normally they would be they'd be walking with God, excited to see him. But this time, after the fall, they're hiding. Right? They knew, I did something wrong. I did something God said not to do. And so they're hiding from God, such that he has to come seek and find them. And then, not only are they hiding, but they've now realized what was previously this open, vulnerable position before God, that they were naked and unashamed. Now there's inherently shame. Something is different and wrong about them that they need to cover up their intimate and private areas. And so you see that the overlap of those two things, that the guilt for what they did led to this increased experience of shame, such that they're hiding and covering themselves. And all of us share in those experiences. What Adam and Eve started has been passed on, unfortunately, to every single one of us, such that we can relate to that. And the beauty of the gospel, the beauty is that in Christ, we have hope. Because Christ deals beautifully, graciously, and sufficiently with both our guilt and our shame. We'll flesh this out more in this series, but just to give a really quick overview, in Luke 15, we see this kind of the opposite effect of Genesis 3. In Luke 15, you have the story of the prodigal son who tells his father, wish you were dead, I want my inheritance now. He goes off, he squanders everything, and there's guilt that he feels for treating his father in that way. But there's also shame that he feels because he found himself in a position in the pig slop, feeding the pigs, that was beneath who his father had intended for him to be. So he says deep guilt and shame, and he's coming back to the father. And what's the father do? The father is looking for him. He sees him far off, and he runs to him. And he doesn't even give him a chance to say, I'm sorry, any of these sorts of things. He just deals immediately with that guilt, wraps his arms around the son, in that moment, also thinking that the father is getting the pig slop and the filth onto himself, and he doesn't care. And that image of how God pursues us, loves us, and is ready to deal with our guilt and shame gives us great hope. We're going to continue to examine that as we look through this series.